low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jean, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the July 4th, 2026 issue of Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Two banks agree to merge. They can't agree on how to make chili. Fifth Third's acquisition of regional bank Comerica has leaders confronting a dicey question. Beans or no beans? By Ben Glickman. Big corporate tie-ups are always delicate affairs involving integrating systems, replacing signs and branding, and making sure a newly combined workforce gets along. But at nearly $11 billion bank deal last year has an added sticking point: chili recipes. Following Cincinnati lenders Fifth Third's acquisition of Texas-based Comerica Bank, employees from different regions have clashed over the best way to make the dish. We got a little bit of an internal civil war here between people who like their chili with beans, no beans, or on spaghetti, Fifth Third Chief Executive Tim Spence told Wall Street analysts in April, so that we're going to have to solve before we can truly say we're one company. The meat of the issue? Cincinnatians have specific preferences when it comes to chili. Restaurants in Ohio metropolis serve the meat stew on top of spaghetti or ladled over a hot dog with a huge amount of shredded cheese, a version called cheese coney. Texans are known for their thick, beefy version with no beans and definitely no tomatoes. Chili is believed to have its roots in Mexican cuisine and was popular in the 19th century as a cheap and portable source of protein for cowboys. It's been the state dish since 1977. Spence's first inkling that chili would be an issue came in his first town hall in Houston after the deal was announced. A Comerica employee asked the chief if he prefers chili with beans or without. He declined to answer. He decided to address the issue head-on in the next earnings call, saying he was trying to inject some fun into what can be a tedious integration process. He didn't anticipate the response. After the call, analyst Brian Fennerin launched an informal poll on his Bloomberg terminal in which he queried investors and analysts about their preferences. "Who puts chili on spaghetti?" one responded. "Chili with spaghetti is my only bear case," another wrote. One respondent said the bank was undervalued when it came to price to tangible bean value. The reaction prompted Spence to tell marketing chief Melissa Stevens that they had to organize a bank-wide contest. Spence is no chili novice. When he arrived at the Fifth Third as chief strategy officer over a decade ago and first addressed his team, someone asked Spence about his preferred Cincinnati chili joint. Spence, who grew up in Oregon, and begun making the rounds of local spots and identified his early favorite. The team approved. "Immediate insider cred," he said. Last year, when Fifth Third's senior management team held its first chili cook-off, Spence finished second. His recipe in the competition excluded beans, but doubled up on onions. Kurt Farmer, the Texas-based former CEO of Comerica and now vice chair at Fifth Third, said Texans are more likely to take up arms over their barbecue style, but chili is a close second. Texans, he said, wouldn't consider a dish made of ground beef, beans, and tomatoes to be chili. While meeting with Fifth Third employees in the Cincinnati area, Farmer has been repeatedly asked if he likes Cincinnati chili, and if so, how he likes it prepared. His introduction to Cincinnati chili was a three-way: spaghetti, chili, and a large amount of shredded cheese. The verdict? I really like it. The connections with chili run deep at Fifth Third. The largest Cincinnati-style restaurant chain, Skyline Chili, is opening a flagship location in Fifth Third headquarters. Skyline CEO Dick Williams said he considers Spence a friend and that the bank wanted more dining options as it moved employees back downtown. Lifelong Texan Peter Sefcik, formerly of Comerica and now head of wealth and asset management for Fifth Third, relocated to Cincinnati several months ago. When friends and colleagues urged him to try Cincinnati chili, he didn't understand what they meant. He and his family tried Skyline soon after moving. He ordered a chilito, which is chili and cheese wrapped in a tortilla. Spaghetti and sour cream are optional. He says he loved it. I can eat a tortilla any time of day, so perfect for me. Spence views the chili debate as a way of bringing together two cultures. As with most merger integrations, layoffs have followed. Fifth Third has cut several hundred positions in Michigan and Texas and closed some branches in Michigan. Spence is already sketching out the contours of a bank-wide contest where different regions will nominate their champions to compete in a final round of taste testing. Employees across the country will be able to nominate judges. Results will be binding. Moving back home used to be a sign of failure. Now it shows financial savvy. Nearly half of American adults under 30, pinched by the high cost of housing, are living with a parent. It can be an adjustment for both. Samantha Stobo was fresh off a breakup and unable to afford her Manhattan two-bedroom alone. So the 29-year-old decided to move in with her mom in Miami until she could get back on her feet. She told herself it would only take a few months. Now 33, Stobo has no plans to move out. "I thought it was going to be temporary," Stobo said, "but it's been 3 years now and I love it." Living at home as a 20-something was once viewed as a failure to launch and even a source of embarrassment in a culture that places a premium on independence. That is no longer the case. Living at home is now often viewed as a sign of financial prudence and, for some, a long-term prospect. Chronically high living costs are helping reshape the milestones of early adulthood in America. The national median home price hovers above $400,000. Rents are at the record highs in cities across the U.S., and many recent college graduates are saddled with tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. Even though some of these young adults pay their folks' rent, it tends to be well below the cost of living on their own. "Everything is just out of reach," said 28-year-old Megan Talley, who lives at home with her mom in the Atlanta suburbs. "If a young person wants to live alone, you could do it, but you'd be dead broke at the end of the month." Last year, 49% of adults under age 30 said they lived with a parent, up 12 percentage points from 2019, according to the Federal Reserve's latest survey of household economics and decision-making. Nearly a third of those adults were 25 or older. Some economists put that figure lower and note that the Fed study doesn't distinguish between children living in their parents' homes versus parents living with their children's homes. Still, young people say that living at home in 2026 doesn't carry the stigma that it once did because of how unaffordable life has become. About 55% of young adults who moved back home said it was out of financial necessity, according to a spring survey by the financial services firm Thrivent. So many parents and adult children are living together now that it's beginning to transform aspects of American society, from when members of the younger generation start a family to the way builders think about designing homes. Far from hiding it, some now broadcast their lives as stay-at-home daughters or stay-at-home sons on social media. Stobo says posting about her mother-daughter living situation on TikTok has earned her a friendly comment section filled with others in the same position and makes her some money. "No one ever judges me," she said. "The conversation tends to be more like, 'That's awesome, and I bet you're saving money.'" Casey Wright, 28-year-old, moved back home to Oxford, Michigan 3 years ago after being laid off from 2 consecutive jobs. She redecorated her childhood bedroom to match her adult aesthetic, tearing down her Twilight posters and choir awards and hanging a floral tapestry and framed landscapes. She and her parents have come to an agreement on living together as adults. She no longer has a curfew, for instance. But before she goes out, Wright's parents require her to tell them where she's going and what time she expects to be back. The Wrights have dinner together every night and go golfing or walk together a few times a month. Casey still hangs out in her parents' room occasionally to talk about movies with her dad or to gossip with her mom. She just doesn't spend time with her parents quite as often as she did when she was a child and is more often in her room playing video games or reading. It's not as much as when I was younger because I feel like there's almost that separation that's needed as an adult, she said. You're not just living in your childhood home as a child. Multi-generational living has long been more of a norm among Hispanic, Asian, and Black households, along with immigrant families. During the pandemic, a broader swath of 20-somethings returned home. It was supposed to be short-term. Then came record inflation and double-digit rent increases. By July of 2020, 52% of young Americans age 18 to 29 lived with at least one parent, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of census data. It was the first time a majority of young adults in the country had lived with parents since the Great Depression. That share has likely dropped since then, but for some people, the arrangements have stuck. Living with parents became a dominant living arrangement in America for people in this age group, said Lawrence Steinberg, a Temple University psychology professor who recently wrote the book You and Your Adult Child. States such as California and New York have loosened regulations around building accessory dwelling units in recent years. One nicknamed Granny Flats, ADUs are now used to house budget-squeezed adult children. Villa Homes, a California home builder, is used to this kind of customer. The firm is seeing more families add detached ADUs for their grown children or other relatives to live in for a few years and save money for a starter home. Carmen Johnson, 33, has loved living with her parents in the Detroit metro area since the start of COVID. She doesn't pay rent, splits grocery bills with her family, and invests those savings in her music career toward a future home. It beats barely making ends meet in her old Los Angeles apartment. COVID flipped the script, Johnson said. It's a blessing in disguise. She isn't ashamed of living at home and doesn't judge other people for it either, but she wouldn't necessarily reveal it to a first date unless asked directly. Bringing home a date also requires a bit of mental calculus. It's like, okay, is my dad going to be in the living room watching TV? Johnson said. Sometimes that kind of strategizing goes both ways. Jessica Suzio, a 52-year-old widow in Michigan, has tried to get back into the dating scene in recent years, but with her two sons living at home, both in their mid-20s, bringing back a new boyfriend is uncomfortable for all involved, she said. Suzio is happy to have her sons at home, and they help with household expenses by paying her some rent. When they were younger, I was daydreaming about the days that I would be an empty nester, she said, but I've grown to really appreciate them sticking around. Kevin Grolig, a 59-year-old real estate agent in the D.C. metro area, started noticing that his clients were delaying downsizing their homes because their adult children were still living there. So he came up with a 4-step plan to get grown children out of the house. The most important, agree on a move-out timeline before the child even steps back in the door. Casey Wright in Michigan doesn't pay rent, but her father Craig said that she has been a big help around the house. She does much of the grocery shopping, helps with the cooking, and has learned to use the riding lawnmower, manicuring the yard when Craig is busy. About 5 times a day, she says, her mom knocks on her door, often to ask help with technology. If I had the ability to, I would move out tomorrow, Wright said. Nothing against her parents. I would just love to have the freedom to do what they're doing at my age. Wright's father wishes the same for his daughter. He and his wife expected to have an empty nest by now, but he realizes that the housing market is different today than when he was in his 30s in the 1980s and bought a 3-bedroom home for $70,000, less than a fifth of today's median home price. He estimated his salary back then was about $35,000. Some of Craig's friends also have their adult children living at home. It's kind of normal, he said. The pied-à-terre tax comes for one of the most iconic towers on Billionaires Row. High-valued units in Manhattan's 432 Park Avenue are slated to pay millions of dollars under a new tax on luxury second homes, by Will Parker and James Fanelli. A 1,400-foot luxury condo tower on Manhattan's Billionaires Row looks to be one of the most lucrative targets for the new tax on high-end second homes in New York City. Past buyers at the building, known as 432 Park Avenue, include Jennifer Lopez and former Yankee slugger Alex Rodriguez. The Saudi property magnate Fawaz al-Hakir still owns there, though he once listed his penthouse for $169 million in 2021. It didn't sell. Under the new law, New York City will tax second homes worth more than $5 million. The law passed the state legislature in May and went into effect July 1st. More than a third of 92 high-value apartments at 432 Park Avenue probably meet that criteria, according to a Wall Street Journal review of property and tax records, making the property one of the biggest piggy banks for the city's pied-à-terre revenue. Condo owners at the building will be on the hook for at least $3 million annually, based on records indicating that at least 36 units are used as second homes. The tax bill would be on top of the $3.6 million in property taxes these owners already pay. At the extreme end, an owner's tax bill might double. A penthouse on a high floor that already owes $189,000 a year in property tax would pay twice that in property taxes under the pied-à-terre provision. But the actual tax bill from the property could be considerably higher if more owners are leaving their units vacant than the available public records indicate. Determining what qualifies as a luxury second home could get messy and cause problems for city officials. Ultra-wealthy owners with near infinite resources for accountants and attorneys are likely to contest the city's valuation of their homes as well as their residency status, real estate professionals have said. If you come up with something that's too complicated, you don't get revenue right away, you just get litigation, said Donna Olshan, president of Olshan Realty. Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Zohan Mamdani proposed to tax second homes or pied-à-terre to address the city's budget deficit. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, campaigned on raising taxes on the wealthy and creating new social programs such as universal child care. Skyscraper residences in Manhattan, such as 432 Park, are the most likely properties to pay large shares of the tax because they contain so many high-priced second homes. A few blocks from 432 Park is 220 Central Park South, where Mamdani recorded a video promoting the policy, gesturing up from the sidewalk to billionaire Ken Griffin's $238 million spread on the 50th floor. Griffin could end up owing $1 million a year on top of the $837,000 in property tax he pays now. The proposed tax also applies to townhomes, which can sell for more than $10 million in several parts of Manhattan. Altogether, Hochul's office said there are 10,000 homes in New York City that would pay the tax, totaling $500 million in new revenue a year. Here's where things start to get complicated. For condominium buildings such as 432 Park, the city's Department of Finance doesn't acknowledge the real market value for tax purposes. It has for decades instead been required by law to assess condos as if they were rental properties, which in New York include many lower-cost units subject to rent regulations. The practice means that condos and co-op values are greatly depressed for tax purposes. The city plans to develop a new system to assess condos and co-ops in a way that reflects their true market value. For now, officials think that a city-calculated market value of $1 million equates to a real market value of at least $5 million. A market value of $1 million is the proposed taxable threshold for condos, and at 432 Park, 92 units have at least that value. The tax would be levied on total value on a 3-tier scale. Lower valued properties would owe a 4% annual surcharge on value. Middle-tier properties would owe 5.25%, and the highest valued tier would owe 6.5%. 30 of the potentially taxable homes have a second home rider, including in a mortgage, public mortgage records show, making their pied-à-terre status most likely. Just those 30 homes would yield $2.4 million in new tax, though there still could be exceptions. An additional 6 homes are likely to be pied-à-terre because their owners are either registered to vote or receive a homestead exemption out of state. Many more units are owned by LLCs, and the owner's residency status is unclear. For buildings such as 432 Park, officials could use city income tax records to help make residency determinations, said Benjamin Williams, an attorney at the real estate-focused firm Rosenberg and Estes. That approach could still produce a few sticky situations. Some second homeowners, such as those who live mostly in the Hamptons on Long Island outside the city but own a condo in the city, pay city income tax because they work full-time in Manhattan. But because they don't sleep at the condo most of the time, they would now owe a pied-à-terre tax on it, Williams said. Some homes that are rented out might end up exempt from the tax. Other units could be exempt if the owner's family members are living there. For now, the looming tax doesn't appear to have deterred the business of buying and selling luxury real estate. During the week of June 22nd alone, 27 sales contracts for homes of $4 million or more were signed in Manhattan, according to Olshan Realty. The condos sold in the category had an average asking price of $6.9 million. The number of sales in June was on par with the same month last year. Some people who live in 432 Park are busy contending with more expensive problems. The building's resident board is suing the property's developers and construction team, alleging shoddy construction resulting in noise vibrations, flooding, and lower values for condo units. The plaintiffs claim more than $271 million in damages, or more than half the projected pied-à-terre tax collection for all of New York City in 1 year. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Trump accounts are now live. Here's what to know. Accounts might be worth opening even for children who don't qualify for the $1,000 in government seed money, by Ashley Ebling and Richard Rubin. Trump accounts for kids are now available, and there are a lot of considerations for parents who want to open them. The new type of savings account is a custodial individual retirement account for kids with special rules until the year the child turns 18. For the next few years, the Trump accounts come with a $1,000 of seed money from the Treasury Department for newborns. That money will grow tax-deferred with income taxes due upon withdrawal. The $1,000 is a good deal, but it can also make sense for parents to create the accounts even if their children don't qualify for that money. That is because employers, state and local governments, and charities might also make contributions. For most families, it doesn't make sense to add to their own money. Offerings such as a 529 savings plan and even taxable custodial accounts are more flexible and have better tax advantages for parents' contributions. Financial advisors say the best case for adding family money to the accounts could be for wealthy people who have already maxed out 529 savings plans and also want to jumpstart their young children's retirement savings. Who is eligible? Any child with a Social Security number who is under the age 18 at the end of the year the account is established. Under a pilot program, the Treasury Department is seeding the accounts with $1,000 for children born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028 who have Social Security number and are U.S. citizens. When are they available? The accounts rolled out on July 4th, according to the Treasury Department, which is overseeing the program. Banks and other financial institutions are administering accounts. Bank of New York Mellon and Robinhood Markets are managing the initial accounts. The accounts can be rolled over to other companies. Vanguard, for one, has said it is supporting rollovers. How do people get an account? Those with eligible children can elect to open an account by filling out a new IRS tax form, Form 4547, which you can attach to your tax return. There is a box to check if you want to receive the $1,000 seed money. Alternatively, parents and guardians can submit Form 4547 via an IRS online account for individuals. Another step is needed to activate the account on the Trump Account app or at trumpaccount.com, the web version of the app. What are the investment options? At launch, all contributions to Trump accounts are invested in the State Street SPDR portfolio S&P 500 ETF, a low-cost exchange-traded fund that tracks the performance of the S&P 500 index. The Treasury Department has selected other low-cost index ETFs for the lineup from BlackRock's iShares, State Street, and Vanguard. What are the contribution limits? Beyond the $1,000 of federal seed money, others can contribute to the accounts. Parents, relatives, and friends can contribute up to $5,000 annually in after-tax dollars for the years before the child turns 18. The amount increases annually with inflation. Employers can contribute up to $2,500 for an employee or an employee's dependent. Employers might allow employees to direct pre-tax salary to Trump accounts for their employees' children up to the same limit. Getting that upfront tax break could put Trump accounts higher on the priority list for where parents put away money for their children. The Trump administration has been urging corporations, charities, and wealthy individuals to contribute to the accounts, meaning that many people qualify to get extra seed money when they sign up. The Treasury Department said Thursday that philanthropic contributions of stock could go into Trump accounts, though it didn't provide details on how that might work, as the law requires that investments inside Trump accounts track indexes. When can the money be taken out and how is it taxed? Taxes are where the accounts get complicated. It depends on who put the money in, how old you are when you take it out, and what you're using it for. You don't pay taxes on dividends and capital gains that remain in the account. The beneficiary could empty it and use the money for anything on January 1st of the year he or she turns 18. The withdrawals count as taxable income. As with regular IRA, there is an early distribution penalty for withdrawals before age 59.5 unless an exception applies, such as using the money for higher education or up to $10,000 for a first-time home purchase. Say you accept the $1,000 and you use it for college. Then you pay federal income tax on the withdrawal of the $1,000 and any earnings. Say you use it to buy a car. You'll also have to pay a 10% penalty. If you use the money to buy a car after age 59.5, you'll owe income taxes, but no penalty. To make matters even more complicated, say you contributed $10,000 of after-tax money to the account on top of the $1,000 of seed money, and there is a $4,000 of investment earnings. Any distribution you take will be 1/3 taxable because the $1,000 seed money counts as earnings, and the IRA distributions that include after-tax money are partially taxable. If you take out $6,000 in this case, $2,000 would be taxed no matter what you use it for and at what age. You can't cherry pick to take out just the after-tax contributions like you can do with a Roth IRA, said Ian Berger, an IRA analyst with Ed Slott & Company in Rockville Center, New York. Contributions from employers and charities have the same tax treatment as the $1,000 seed money. The new rules of sunscreen. Here's the latest on sun protection heading into the July 4th weekend by Celia Bernard. Just when you thought you had sunscreen figured out, the Food and Drug Administration approved a new ingredient for use later this summer. This adds another layer to the many different kinds available, from the beauty brands that are infusing their makeup and moisturizers with SPF to the environmentally conscious mineral sunscreen, the stuff that makes people's face white. Heading into the height of summer, here's everything you need to know about the latest sunscreen developments. What is this new FDA-approved ingredient, Bemotrazole? Bemotrazole, or BEMT, is the first new ingredient approved by the FDA since the late 1990s. Consumers in other countries love it because it is longer lasting, provides robust sun protection, and doesn't feel greasy or leave white residue. Dermatologists say the decision is long overdue. Bemotrazole has been widely used for decades in Asia and Europe. It provides broader spectrum protection than other ingredients, shielding skin from both UVA rays, which penetrate deep into the skin, causing premature aging, and UVB rays, which cause sunburns. Current chemical products on the market use a mix of ingredients to achieve broad spectrum coverage, but the formulations have weaknesses and require frequent reapplication. When can I buy it? Companies can start using the new ingredient in their products on August 9th. Kenvue, Neutrogena's parent company, has confirmed that it is planning to add bemetrazole into its collection, but didn't say when exactly. CVS Health said it is having conversations with its store brand sunscreen supplier about using the ingredient. It may take a while to see the product on drugstore shelves. To get new products to shelves very quickly, it really depends on the company, Bank of America analyst Anna Lizzle said. Innovation on some of these products can take a year. Does my SPF moisturizer or foundation work as a sunscreen? Given the increasing awareness of the risks of sun damage, SPF has found its way into plenty of cosmetic products. Moisturizers, foundations, concealers, powders, and lip balms have increasingly been marketed with additional sun protection in the past couple of years. In stores like Ulta and Sephora, twice as many tinted moisturizers and foundations with SPF launched in the first 5 months of this year compared with the same period a year earlier, data provider Circana found. While extra SPF is helpful, it's important to not treat most beauty products as one-and-done sun protection, experts say. For many foundations and powders, you would need to use several more layers than you normally would to achieve the advertised SPF protection, Mount Sinai dermatologist Dr. Helen Heath said. If you're headed outside, dermatologists recommend applying sunscreen in addition to SPF cosmetics. What SPF should I use? The numbers on a sunscreen's SPF label can be a bit misleading. At SPF 30, a sunscreen already blocks 97% of UVB rays. Going up from there, the difference becomes very slight. SPF 50 is just 1 percentage point more than protection at 98%. SPF 100, despite the name, protects against 99% of rays. No sunscreen truly protects the skin at 100%. Some studies suggest that SPF 100 does provide a meaningful leg up on SPF 50 sunscreens. Other health advocates have argued that the label creates a false sense of security for consumers who might not reapply frequently enough as a result. The FDA has toyed with imposing a cap on advertised SPF values since 2011, arguing that numbers stretching towards 100 are misleading. That cap was first proposed at SPF 50 and later increased to 60. The agency never made a final decision. The bottom line, dermatologists recommend use of an SPF 30 or higher reapplying every 2 hours. What has better protection, mineral or chemical sunscreen? Chemical sunscreens are considered safe by dermatologists, but studies establish that some chemical UV filters harm coral reefs and that others point to possible associations with hormonal health issues in humans and have put some consumers on edge. Before the approval of BEMT, the FDA in 2019 stated that only 2 mineral sunscreen ingredients could be deemed safe and effective, saying there is insufficient data to say the same about chemical UV filters. The following year, a study showed that chemical UV filters were absorbed into the bloodstream at levels that warrant further testing. Since then, the European Union has lowered the acceptable concentration of certain chemical filters, including homosalate and oxybenzone. Australia has proposed new restrictions as well. In the U.S., oxybenzone is in just 5% of chemical sunscreens these days, according to the Environmental Working Group. To compare, in 2007, it was in 70% of those products. Interest in mineral sunscreen has risen significantly among U.S. consumers in the past 2 years, Lizzle said. New strides in formulations mean that many of the products are no longer leave a white cast. Dermatologists agree that exposure to UV rays, a known carcinogen, is far more dangerous than any specific sunscreen use. The best sunscreen is the one that you're actually going to use, Dr. He said. In times of extreme heat, sunburns are even more dangerous because they limit the body's ability to cool off. Newsletters by Lee Camping Carter. Beware the tick that causes a red meat allergy. Here's another reason to cover up in the thick of tick season this summer. There's a bite that can leave you allergic to red meat. Alpha-gal syndrome is a potentially life-changing allergy linked to the Lone Star tick, and Lone Star ticks are on the move. Alzheimer's specialist Mark Agrenin says science will continue to make great leaps in diagnosing and treating the disease, but that's only part of the battle. New drugs are replacing chemo for aggressive breast cancer. Drug companies have found promising new options for one of the most aggressive and hard-to-treat forms of breast cancer after decades with very few breakthroughs. And in the news, even elementary schoolers are being put on popular weight loss drugs such as Wegovy. Without further studies, it isn't certain that young children can safely use the medications for weight loss without compromising a critical period of growth for their bones and brain. Also, food makers are cramming protein into everything, from chips to bread to candy bars. Now the industry's go-to additive is running dry. U.S. health officials unveil a package of reforms aimed at cutting about 6 months to a year off the time it takes to do a safety study, which is the first round of testing drugs in people. At 82, Keith Richards isn't done yet. If it's a matter of energy, we've got it. The rock legend isn't ruling out a tour next year, by Elias Late. Keith Richards doesn't seek out old Rolling Stones records unless he draws a blank trying to remember one of his many iconic riffs. I'm saying, how the hell did that song go? I better bone up. But eluding the music of rock royalty is no easy task. Richards has 4 adult children, and they'll play my stuff, he acknowledges. Sometimes I hear it on the radio, and it comes out of nowhere. In these moments, the guitarist is poleaxed like the rest of us. It hits me, he says with a devilish grin. Oh man, that's good. Splayed in an armchair in a midtown Manhattan hotel with views of a fog-shrouded Rockefeller Center, Richards still radiates roguish live wire energy at 82. He fidgets with a pair of eyeglasses and points a knobby index finger to underscore a point, jiggles his leg restlessly, and at one point mimes playing guitar. Wizened and creased with a hoop the size of a quarter dangling in his left ear, he relies on gestures, shrugs, grimaces, guffaws to flesh out responses that lean terse. He's discussing the latest Rolling Stones album, Foreign Tongues, due July 10th, which has brought the band together in New York. Mick Jagger is nearby, ambling through the hotel hallway. The Rolling Stones released its first new collection of original songs in 18 years with 2003's Hackney Diamonds. Now the group is putting out a second less than 3 years later, a rate of productivity unmatched since the 1980s. Their fans were reacting to the new music and they got a bit of momentum, says Andrew Watt, who produced the previous album as well as Foreign Tongues. Richards offers an alternative explanation for the burst of studio activity. Andrew's a little ball of fire, full of energy. He doesn't mind kicking ass, and he doesn't mind whose ass it is. With Richards' gnarled, withering guitar lines and Jagger drawling and declaiming, there's no mistaking the band behind Foreign Tongues. The album was preceded in May by Rough and Twisted, a wandering blues number with riffs like barbed wire, and In the Stars, which softens arena rock with polished backing vocals. Logan Peterson, a 25-year-old fan, calls the 2 songs head and shoulders above what they put out on Hackney Diamonds. It felt like they warmed up from the previous project, he added. It felt almost like some old-school Stones. After 50 years of toiling in obscurity, this is their time, Conan O'Brien joked as he introduced the band to preview a few new songs for an admiring crowd in Brooklyn in May. When O'Brien lobbed questions at Richards, many of the guitarist's answers were indiscernible. He seemed uninterested in keeping his microphone in the vicinity of his mouth. I'm still trying to work my way back in, Richards says, recounting the appearance the next day. Can't say I didn't have long training. When the Rolling Stones first arrived in the U.S. from England, it was another world. Richards recalled with wonder in his weathered voice. We made it to America. You dreamt about that. The group's primal musical stew came from the thoroughly American ingredients: ragged blues, chugging rock, narcotic country, and hoarse soul. Richard sometimes spent days without leaving the studio, a wily guitar wonk dreaming up rugged riffs. Some 24 of those still have a visceral, immediate impact on a wide swath of the population, and the band released a series of fearsome albums between Beggar's Banquet in 1968 and Tattoo You in 1981. Most artists never come even close to striking greatness in the way the Stones did once, Peterson said, and they did it 4 or 5 times. In Brooklyn, O'Brien marveled that Jagger still sounds much like he did in 1968. "I was taking a lot more drugs in 1968, the singer replied, without offering any secrets for vocal longevity other than practice. "You never believe what Mick says," Richards laughed the next day. "That said, the fact is that he does sound the same," the guitarist adds. "If he didn't, I'd fire him." Chuckle, chuckle. "Bless his heart, he's full of beans," he continued, describing Jagger this way twice in 30 minutes, and playing some really great blues harp on this record. Over the years, the relationship between Richards and Jagger has waxed and waned. One pole of warmth might be the pair recording Wild Horses, which came out on Sticky Fingers, a seedy jewel of an album from 1971. They both stood at the microphone together with the fifth of bourbon, passing it back and forth, and sang the lead and harmony into one microphone, the pianist Jim Dickinson remembered in Richards' autobiography, Life. At the other end of the spectrum, while recording the 1983 album Undercover, bickering and sniping and barely able to tolerate each other, Jagger took the afternoon shift and Richards would work in the middle of the day so they didn't have to cross paths. The chapter of Life dedicated to this period opens with the line, "It was the beginning of the 80s when Mick started to become unbearable." Some friction is productive. One guy goes to the left and the other goes to the right, and that's how you get the songs that you love, Watt explains. But too much becomes a problem if the goal is to finish the album. While producing Foreign Tongues, he served both as a buffer and a translator. "My job was to take something that Mick thought Keith may not like and bring it to Keith if Eli liked it. And then maybe he did like it, and I would say, I think it could be even better if you do that." It wasn't always sunshine and roses. Often they don't appropriately or correctly guess how the other one's going to feel about what they may be representing. Watt says, "You get your fucking head chopped off sometimes, but then you screw it back on and you get up and you go for another round." There are many different factions of Rolling Stone fans, each with their own idea about what the band was at its peak and when the band fell off. "I don't like the production on the new Stones record," is something people have been saying for 50 years, says Christian Bonner, co-host of Under the Radar, a Rolling Stones podcast. But even as the fans fire off hot takes, they keep flocking to the group's shows. The Rolling Stones remain stadium-filling stalwarts with more than $100 million grossing tours than anyone in history. At this point, the band's concerts elicit a twinge of awe that they are able to do this at all at their age, explains Justin Sosa, who has seen 25 shows and hosts his own Rolling Stones podcast called Hang Fire. "You walk away impressed, proud, pleased. Even if that mushy emotional stuff is probably the last thing Mick wants to hear, you can't help but feel it. I mean, damn it, look at these guys. They're still doing it." In 2024, Bonner and his co-host Tim Lindsay drove from Toronto to New Jersey to see their favorite band perform after the release of Hackney Diamonds. "Both shows were really great," Lindsay recalls. "We were pretty close to the action and it sounded amazing. We're ready to see them anytime, anywhere." The band has not announced any shows in 2026, though, and nervous speculation has flared online, maybe this is it, and the group won't tour again. In recent years, Richards has suffered from arthritis in his hands. Possibly because the man once punctured a lung falling off a ladder in his home library and later fractured his skull tumbling out of a tree in Fiji, he brushes off arthritis as if it were a pesky mosquito. "It's not painful, it's benign," Richard says. "It's just that I needed more space, so I made a few guitars that widened the headboard to give his fingers additional room to move." He ruled out hitting the road this year. But I don't see any reason why we'll not tour next year, Richard says. Mind you, I could be wrong. He has floated the idea of trying a residency instead of a multi-city extravaganza. If it's just a matter of energy, yeah, we got it, he said. It's conserve and then open up the valves again. Learn how to hold yourself in reserve a little bit and play around with energy rather than to just smash into it. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. People have long worn the American flag. What it means has evolved. For almost as long as Old Glory has flown over the nation, its stars and stripes have influenced American style. By Sam Shuby and Lane Florsham. Holidays like Memorial Day and the 4th of July have long cemented the American flag's associations with summertime. But this year, with a World Cup on North American soil and the 250th birthday of the United States, Old Glory is getting an even bigger spotlight. Plenty of people will be flying a standard 3-by-5-foot flag outside their homes. Countless others, though, will be wearing the flag on t-shirts and hoodies, on cotton sweaters and Lux logo wear, even on the odd pair of novelty overalls. Lately, some of the most prominent instances of wearing the flag have been in the nation's capital. FBI Director Kash Patel and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth have both worn flag-printed socks. At the UFC cage match held on the White House lawn last month, the Fighting League's Octagon girls wore sequined mini dresses featuring stars and stripes. For almost as long as it has been a physical emblem of the nation, the flag is also featured in fashion statements by figures ranging from government officials to counterculture protesters to luxury designers at home and abroad. That's thanks, in part, to its durability and versatility as a symbol, said Tommy Hilfiger, whose namesake brand has long used the American flag and its colors in its designs. In fashion, it can communicate pride and identity, but it also leaves room for personal interpretation, Hilfiger said. That's what makes it powerful. People can connect to it in their own way. Homemade flag fashion. Flag fashion predates commercially manufactured clothing, said Elizabeth Way, a curator at the Museum of the Fashion Institute of Technology, which has a homemade dress made for a patriotic pageant from the late 19th century in its collection. Flag attire from that time and earlier communicated something different than apparel made after the advance of large-scale clothing manufacturing, she explained. Before the era of mass production, Way said, making your own flag clothing would have been more about individual engagement with ideas of patriotism. By the early 20th century, manufacturing innovations had helped to make the flag a more widespread symbol. As a result, wearing it became less of a specific political message and more about engaging in a larger culture, Way added. The commercialization of flag clothing, of course, has not stopped politically turbulent times from giving it new meaning. While federal code states that the flag should never be used as apparel, that rule is unenforceable. Freedom of speech trumps the flag code, said Scott M. Gunter, professor emeritus of American Studies at San Jose University and longtime vexillologist or flag scholar. From counterculture to American optimism. In the 1960s, Gunter explained, the flag was embedded into the international landscape of symbols associated with hippies and anti-war activists. One notable example, the flag shirt that the activist Abbie Hoffman was wearing when he was arrested while trying to disrupt a meeting of the House Committee on Un-American Activities in 1968. Years later, as wartime fervor was overtaken by a new era of American optimism in the 1980s, ascendant designers like Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren tapped into the spirit by using the flag as a motif in their brands. A simple sweater with a flag across the chest that Lauren introduced in 1989 has since regularly appeared in his company's collections, finding fans across generations, including many Gen Zers who now post about it on TikTok. This year, Loren's flag sweater was featured on a new stamp that the U.S. Postal Service issued in collaboration with the designer. In malls nationwide. While Loren's brand was made wearing the flag aspirational, others like Old Navy made a flag fashion more accessible. The mall brand has sold flag t-shirts each year since its founding in 1994. As soon as we start summer, our number one priority is that flag tee, said Sarah Holm, the company's head of design. It's bigger than the brand at this point. An Old Navy spokeswoman said that roughly 1 million flag t-shirts are sold now annually, with purchases peaking around Memorial Day. The year 1994 was also when the U.S. men's soccer team played in its first World Cup held on American soil, sported jerseys featuring a cascade of white stars against a backdrop the color and texture of washed denim, a motif that somehow made the flag seem even more American. Unapologetically different was how Inigo Turner, design director at Adidas Football, described the jerseys which the brand reissued for this year's World Cup. Nicholas Angioni, whose collection of vintage menswear includes several Ralph Lauren flag sweaters, said their appeal is less patriotic than it is personal. The sweaters remind Angioni, who owns a dog training business in Norwalk, Connecticut, of past summer vacations on Cape Cod and of his father, another Ralph Lauren collector. The way Angioni associates flag apparel with his own experiences reflects an observation made by Gunter, the vexologist, that wearing the American flag is an expression of American individualism. The general idea with people with flag clothes tends to be, I have the right idea of what the flag is, so I can wear it the way I want. Taylor Swift marries Travis Kelce and Dior, a win for LVMH. A year-long fashion drumbeat ended not in an American designer, but in Dior Haute Couture, with a billionaire pop star choosing a Jonathan Anderson design by Sarah Adams. In a wedding party kept so secret, vows were exchanged under military-grade arena security, fashion details were among the first to emerge. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce wore custom Dior Haute Couture for their Friday wedding. Swift paired the custom Jonathan Anderson design couture piece with Cartier jewelry, and the bride and groom wore custom-made Christian Louboutin shoes, the three companies confirmed. This is the designer's first couture wedding dress for a world-renowned celebrity. Longtime Swift publicist Tree Payne wrote in a statement about the Dior commission. Swift, 36, wed Kelce, also 36, in a Friday ceremony officiated by comedian Adam Sandler at New York City's Madison Square Garden Arena complex. Chosen for its security measures and for its covert arrival and exit corridors, MSG's surrounding streets were closed by permit from July 3rd to prevent sneaky fashion glimpses of bride, groom, and guests who included Gigi Hadid, Selena Gomez, Karlie Kloss, and Hugh Grant. Jewel of the Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton Group, run by Chief Executive Bernard Arnault, has sought to refresh its design hallmarks under creative director Anderson, the first ever designer to run its women's wear, menswear, and haute couture divisions. Previous brides who chose Christian Dior, founded in 1946 by its namesake couturier, include Princess Caroline of Monaco, model Miranda Kerr in her wedding to Snap CEO Evan Spiegel, and First Lady Melania Trump for her 2006 wedding to the president. Swift, famous for eschewing a personal stylist and for espousing an idiosyncratic, often high-low style, blending designer and mainstream items, often uses fashion choices to communicate riddles and so-called Easter eggs to loyal Swifties. Cartier jewelry is referenced in Swift's ballad Elizabeth Taylor from her most recent album, The Life of a Showgirl. The 41-year-old Anderson, who hails from Northern Ireland, collaborated closely with both Swift and Kelce to create the wedding looks, Payne said. Anderson served as the creative director of LVMH House Lowe from 2013 until 2025, earning widespread critical acclaim and commercial success for fusing wit and whimsy into the heritage leather maker. He was appointed creative director at Dior last spring. Is honey having a beauty moment? Beauty brands trying to solve for inflammation and sensitive skin turn to one of the oldest ingredients by Fiorella Valdesolo. The benefits of honey were ingrained in Gabriel Merkin as a child growing up in New Zealand. Manuka honey is the medicine of choice for every Kiwi kid, says Merkin, referring to a type of honey native to New Zealand and parts of Australia. You have a sore throat, a cough, a tummy ache, your mom gives you Manuka honey. You'll fall and scratch yourself, it's Manuka honey that gets put on the wound with the Band-Aid on top. Merkin eventually co-founded Activist, a brand devoted to topical and ingestible Manuka with her husband, Luke Harwood. The product highlights Manuka's purported immunity benefits, but also the ingredient's potent skincare potential. Honey, found in most kitchen pantries, is stepping into the beauty spotlight thanks to Activist and Anu, another buzzy brand that already made its way into treatments offered by celebrity estheticians like Elizabeth Grace Hand in New York and Cynthia Marie Franco in Los Angeles. Honey's status as a prized skincare ingredient dates back centuries. Legend has it that Cleopatra bathed in donkey milk and honey to soften and smooth her skin. Today, it's still touted as a natural way to cleanse and soothe skin, and unlike other trend-driven natural ingredients, doctors and estheticians say honey lives up to its skincare claims. Honey is a humectant, so it helps to draw moisture in and boost hydration, says Dr. Marissa Garshik, a New York City and New Jersey-based dermatologist. It also has anti-inflammatory properties which can help to calm redness and irritation, and antioxidants which can help protect the skin against environmental stressors. While all kinds of honey like clover, wildflower, and raw can be used on the skin, Manuka stands out for its antimicrobial benefits. Garshik says that's because it has higher levels of a compound called methylglycol, making it especially good for wound healing and acne-prone skin. Honey's popularity is partly a response to the rise of harsher active ingredients. Skin becoming increasingly sensitized due to factors like environmental pollution and multi-step routines. With all these 10-step routines and exfoliant and cosmetic treatments, people have really worn their skin down. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the July 4th, 2026 issue of Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal. We read from Off Duty every Saturday at 8 p.m. Your reader has been Jean. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have Sports Illustrated at 10 o'clock. We have The Athletic, and at 11 o'clock, we have episode number 1 of Kin by Tayari Jones. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability